What if I told you that the FDA doesn't approve your food and then walk away? It sets something called a tolerance level, an acceptable amount of harm, a threshold below which the damage is considered too small to regulate, and then it lets the food ship. Most people assume that FDA allowed means FDA safe. Those are not the same sentence. They have never been the same sentence. The agency itself will tell you this in its own documentation if you read past the first page. What it calls acceptable, your liver is still processing. What it calls below the threshold, your kidneys are still filtering. Every day, every meal. From food you bought at a normal store with a normal label that said nothing about any of this. I have 20 of them for you today. Foods that are fully legal, actively sold, and linked in clinical and toxicological literature to organ damage, kidney damage, liver damage, heart damage, damage to the gut lining that has downstream effects on everything else. Some of these you eat weekly, some you give to your children, some are marketed specifically as health foods. Stay through number 13 because that one has been in the American food supply for over 60 years, and a European regulatory body formally flagged it for kidney toxicity in 2012. The company that makes the most popular version of it is still selling it here. And stay for number 1. Because number 1 is not junk food. It is not a chemical additive. It is something you have been told, repeatedly, by credible sources, to eat more of. And the damage it causes is cumulative, silent, and connected to one of the most underdiagnosed conditions in American medicine. Every item on this list is documented. The links I'm describing are not fringe claims. They come from toxicology studies, clinical nutrition research, FDA adverse event data, and in several cases, formal regulatory actions taken by agencies in other countries that use stricter standards than ours. I'm not telling you to stop eating. I'm telling you what the label doesn't. That distinction matters. Number 13 is a food additive used in dozens of processed products, shown in animal studies to cause kidney tubule damage at doses not dramatically higher than what a regular consumer accumulates. It passed FDA review before those studies existed and has never been reevaluated with modern data. Number 1 is something nutritionists celebrate, something most people have been actively trying to eat more of for a decade, and the organ damage associated with it is real, documented, and invisible because it builds slowly over years in people who have no idea their body is sending them a signal. If you're part of this community, the people who want the full picture, who read past the label, who believe that knowing is better than not knowing, even when the knowing is uncomfortable, subscribe right now. This channel exists because the warning was always there. Someone just decided not to put it on the packaging. Food 20. Canned tomatoes. Tomatoes themselves are not the problem. The can is. Most canned tomatoes are stored in containers lined with a resin that contains bisphenol A, commonly called BPA. Tomatoes are highly acidic. Acidic food accelerates the leaching of BPA from the lining directly into the food inside. The FDA's current position is that BPA at typical exposure levels is safe. The European Food Safety Authority formally lowered its tolerable daily intake for BPA by a factor of 100,000 in 2023 after reviewing newer research on its effects on immune function and the liver. 100,000 times more conservative. BPA is classified as an endocrine disruptor. It mimics estrogen in the body and has been associated in research with liver toxicity, kidney dysfunction, and metabolic disruption at levels well within typical dietary exposure. Glass jars exist. Carton packaging exists. The can is a choice the industry makes because it's cheaper. Your liver pays the difference. Food 19. Farmed Atlantic salmon. Wild salmon and farmed salmon are not the same food. They share a name. Farmed Atlantic salmon, the kind in most supermarkets, is raised in densely packed pens and fed a diet that includes synthetic astaxanthin to produce the pink color consumers expect, because farmed salmon flesh is naturally gray. More significantly, studies have measured polychlorinated biphenyls, or PCBs, in farmed salmon at levels 5 to 10 times higher than in wild-caught varieties. PCBs are persistent organic pollutants that accumulate in fatty tissue and have been linked in long-term studies to liver damage, endocrine disruption, and increased cancer risk. The FDA allows it. The Environmental Working Group has flagged it specifically. The label says salmon. It does not say which salmon, how it was raised, or what it was fed. Food 18, microwave popcorn. The popcorn is fine, the bag is not. Microwave popcorn bags are coated on the inside with a fluorinated compound, historically PFOA, now often replaced with related per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances called PFAs, to prevent oil from soaking through. When you heat the bag, those compounds migrate into the food. PFAS chemicals are called forever chemicals because they do not break down in the human body or the environment. They accumulate in the blood, the liver, and the kidneys. The EPA has linked PFAS exposure to liver damage, immune dysfunction, thyroid disruption, and kidney cancer at the population level. The FDA has been phasing some of them out of food packaging, but the category remains in use, and the long-term accumulation from years of prior exposure is the issue, not just current products. Stovetop popcorn in a pot costs less and involves none of this. Food 17. Artificially colored maraschino cherries. The cherry in your cocktail, your ice cream sundae, your fruitcake, that is not a preserved fruit. It is a bleached, brined, re-dyed, heavily processed confection that begins life as a real cherry and ends up containing red dye number 3, also called erythrocene. Red dye number 3 was banned by the FDA in cosmetics in 1990 after animal studies demonstrated that it caused thyroid tumors in male rats. The FDA explicitly acknowledged the carcinogenicity finding at that time. It left the dye in the food supply for another 34 years. In January 2025, the FDA finally revoked authorization for red dye number 3 in food, giving manufacturers until 2027 to reformulate. As of now, products containing it are still on shelves. The thyroid is a small organ that does enormous work. It did not benefit from 34 years of regulatory delay. Food 16. Brominated vegetable oil. Brominated vegetable oil, or BVO, is a food additive used in some citrus-flavored sodas to keep the flavoring from separating from the liquid. It contains bromine, a chemical compound also used in flame retardants. Research going back decades has linked high bromine intake to neurological symptoms, and, in cases of very heavy soda consumption, to documented kidney and liver damage in individual case reports. In 2023 and 2024, the FDA and then California regulators moved to ban BVO from food. Japan and the European Union had already banned it years earlier. The same product continued shipping in the United States throughout that entire period. This is a recurring story on this list. The rest of the world acts. The American label stays blank. Food 15. White rice. Long-term daily consumption. This one requires nuance, which is exactly why it doesn't get discussed. White rice in moderation is not a significant risk for most people. White rice as a daily staple, eaten in large quantities across decades, is a different conversation. Rice absorbs arsenic from the soil more efficiently than almost any other crop. Inorganic arsenic, the more toxic form, has been detected in rice at levels the FDA has measured and acknowledged but not fully regulated. The agency has issued guidance on rice consumption for infants. It has not issued equivalent guidance for adults who eat rice daily as a primary carbohydrate source. Long-term inorganic arsenic exposure is associated in the epidemiological literature with kidney disease, cardiovascular damage, and increased bladder and lung cancer risk. Brown rice concentrates more arsenic in the bran layer. This is not a reason to eliminate rice. It is a reason to vary your grain sources and to know that natural does not mean without risk. Food 14. Deli meat, sodium nitrite. Sodium nitrite is a preservative and color fixative used in cured meats. Ham, salami, pepperoni, hot dogs, bacon, most deli slices. Under high heat, nitrites react with amino acids in meat to form nitrosamines. Nitrosamines are classified as probable human carcinogens by the International Agency for Research on Cancer, the same body that classifies processed meat as a Group 1 carcinogen, meaning the evidence of carcinogenicity in humans is sufficient, not merely theoretical. The specific organ most associated with nitrosamine-linked damage is the colorectal system, but nitrosamines are metabolized by the liver, and chronic exposure has been studied in connection with hepatic stress markers. The FDA permits sodium nitrite at specific concentrations. The IARC classification sits alongside that permission without appearing on a single package of lunch meat. Community belonging frame. We are halfway through, and the next section is where this gets harder to dismiss. The first 14 items have some distance, processing methods, packaging chemicals, additives you can avoid if you know to look. What's coming now is more difficult because several of these are foods with genuinely good nutritional profiles that carry a shadow the label has no obligation to show you. Stay with me. Number 8 is going to reframe something you thought you understood about one of the most recommended foods in the American diet. Food 13. Potassium bromate in commercial bread. Potassium bromate is a flour-improving agent added to commercial bread products to strengthen dough and produce a better risen, whiter loaf. It has been classified as a possible human carcinogen by the IARC. It has been banned in the European Union, the United Kingdom, Canada, China, Brazil, and several other countries. California passed legislation restricting it in 2023. The FDA has strongly encouraged bakers to stop using it since 1991. It is still legal at the federal level. It is still in products. The concern is that potassium bromate, when bread is not fully baked, remains as residual bromate in the finished product. Studies in animal models have demonstrated kidney tumors and kidney tubule damage at levels that produce the regulatory response in other countries. Your sourdough from the local bakery is likely fine. Your mass-produced sandwich bread deserves a label check. Food 12. High fructose corn syrup. Chronic exposure. High fructose corn syrup is not chemically alien to the body. Your liver can process fructose. The problem is the volume and the source. Fructose is metabolized almost entirely in the liver. When fructose arrives in quantities far exceeding what any whole food would deliver, which is what happens when it's added to beverages, condiments, cereals, and dozens of processed foods simultaneously, the liver converts the excess to fat. This process, replicated consistently in controlled dietary studies, is associated with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, a condition affecting an estimated 80 to 100 million Americans. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease can progress to non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, which can progress to cirrhosis. The pathway is not guaranteed. The association at the population level is not disputed by serious researchers. The industry disputes it at the policy and marketing level. The label says ingredients. It does not say what your liver is doing with them at the volume you're actually consuming. Food 11. Farmed shrimp, imported. Roughly 90% of the shrimp consumed in the United States is imported, and a substantial portion comes from farms in countries with limited antibiotic regulation. Farmed shrimp has repeatedly tested positive for residues of antibiotics that are either banned or strictly controlled in American aquaculture: chloramphenicol, nitrofurans, and others. Chloramphenicol in particular is associated with aplastic anemia in sensitive individuals and has been linked to kidney stress at chronic exposure levels. The FDA tests a fraction of imported seafood. Studies and investigative food safety reports have documented antibiotic residues in imported shrimp reaching American retailers. The label says shrimp. Country of origin labeling for seafood at restaurants is not federally required. You are mostly flying blind. Food 10. Conventional strawberries. Strawberries top the Environmental Working Group's Dirty Dozen list every year, the annual ranking of produce most contaminated with pesticide residues after washing. This is not a fringe environmental claim. It is a measurement of what the USDA's own pesticide data program finds. Strawberries are thin-skinned and eaten whole, which means no peeling away a contaminated outer layer. Residues detected include fungicides associated in animal studies with kidney toxicity and possible human carcinogenicity at chronic exposure. The FDA permits these residues at levels it considers safe. Its safety calculations are based on individual chemicals. They do not account for the combined effect of multiple residues simultaneously. what toxicologists call the cocktail effect. The USDA has found up to 22 different pesticide residues on a single strawberry sample. The FDA's acceptable level for each one of those 22 was calculated alone. Food 9. Titanium dioxide in processed foods. Titanium dioxide is a white pigment added to foods to enhance whiteness and opacity, in candies, chewing gum, certain sauces, pastry glazes, and some dairy products. The European Food Safety Authority concluded in 2021 that titanium dioxide can no longer be considered safe as a food additive. The primary concern is genotoxicity, the potential for nano-sized titanium dioxide particles to damage DNA, with particular concern for the gut lining and immune cells. The EU banned it in food in 2022. The FDA continues to classify it as generally recognized as safe. It is currently in many products on American shelves. The particles are nanoscale. They do not appear on ingredient labels as anything other than titanium dioxide. You have no way of knowing which products contain nanoscale particles versus larger ones without independent testing. Food 8. Canola oil, industrial processing. Canola oil is recommended widely as a heart-healthy fat. The fatty acid profile of canola is genuinely favorable. This is not a question. The processing is the question. Commercial canola oil is extracted using a chemical solvent called hexane, then refined at high heat to remove the unpleasant odor that results from the oil's natural glucosinolate content. That refining process generates trans fats, small amounts, not always captured by nutrition labeling, because the FDA allows a product to list 0 trans fats if it contains less than 0.5 grams per serving. Repeated high-heat cooking with canola oil generates oxidation products that have been studied in connection with inflammation and liver stress. This is not the same as saying canola oil eaten cold is dangerous. It is saying that the food you've been told is healthy has a processing story that the front of the label does not tell. Food 7. Breakfast cereals with synthetic vitamins and BHT. BHT, butylated hydroxytoluene, is an antioxidant preservative added to breakfast cereals, packaged snack foods, and many processed products to prevent oils from going rancid. It is also used in jet fuels, rubber products, and embalming fluid as an antioxidant. In the food supply, animal studies have produced conflicting results, some suggesting tumor-promoting activity, particularly in the liver and kidney, at high doses, others showing antioxidant benefits. The IARC classifies BHT as a possible human carcinogen. The NTP, the National Toxicology Program, has documented BHT as causing liver and kidney tumors in animal studies at the doses tested. The FDA classifies it as generally recognized as safe. It is in cereals marketed specifically to children. The box shows a cartoon. The ingredient list shows BHT. Most parents never reach the ingredient list. Food 6. Cured meats with carrageenan. Carrageenan is a thickening and stabilizing agent derived from red seaweed. It appears in deli meat, lunch meat, plant-based meat alternatives, chocolate milk, infant formula, and dozens of other products. Food-grade carrageenan has been the subject of sustained scientific controversy for decades. Joanne Taubachman at the University of Illinois published research linking carrageenan to intestinal inflammation, ulceration, and, in animal models, tumor promotion in the colon. The National Organic Standards Board voted to remove carrageenan from the approved list for organic products in 2016, a decision that was subsequently overridden by the USDA. The concern is inflammation of the gut lining, a process that, when chronic and untreated, creates downstream stress on the liver and immune system. The FDA considers it safe. The scientific debate is not closed. Food 5. Energy drinks, combined ingredients. No single ingredient in most energy drinks has been definitively ruled harmful at the doses present. The problem is that energy drinks have never been tested as a system. Caffeine, taurine, B vitamins at megadose levels, sugar or artificial sweeteners, herbal extracts including guarana and ginseng, all of these interact. The FDA has received reports of adverse events linked to energy drink consumption, including cardiac events, kidney injury, and liver damage. In 2013, a case series published in a medical journal documented acute liver failure in a young adult attributed to energy drink consumption, with no other identifiable cause. There have been similar case reports since. The specific mechanism implicated in liver cases appears to involve the combination of niacin at the high doses present in some drinks and other metabolic stressors. The drinks are classified as dietary supplements, which means they bypass the pre-market safety review required for food additives. You're buying something that was never reviewed as a whole. Food 4. Conventional apple juice, arsenic. In 2011, consumer advocate and television physician Mehmet Oz raised the issue of arsenic in apple juice on national television and was publicly criticized by the FDA for causing alarm. In 2013, the FDA set an action level for inorganic arsenic in apple juice at 10 parts per billion, the same level it uses for drinking water. That action level was not set because the levels prior to it were safe. It was set because testing showed levels exceeding it in commercially available juice. Consumer Reports had already tested apple juice samples and found inorganic arsenic above that threshold in products available at major retailers. Apple juice is one of the most heavily consumed beverages for children in the United States. Inorganic arsenic exposure in childhood is associated in the public health literature with impaired cognitive development, kidney disease risk, and increased susceptibility to cancer in adulthood. The FDA action level brought the numbers down. It did not make them zero. Food 3. Refined seed oils at high heat, aldehydes. When polyunsaturated oils, sunflower oil, corn oil, soybean oil, are heated to cooking temperatures, they oxidize and produce compounds called aldehydes. Aldehydes are not an additive. They are a byproduct of cooking chemistry. They include acrolein, formaldehyde, and 4-hydroxynonenal, compounds that are genotoxic and have been associated in cellular and animal research with liver damage, neurodegeneration, and cardiovascular disease. Martin Grutfeld at De Montfort University in the United Kingdom has published extensively on aldehyde formation in cooking oils and has called the levels produced during normal high-heat cooking a plausible risk factor for various diseases. You won't find this on a bottle of sunflower oil. The oil itself contains nothing alarming before you heat it. What happens during normal cooking is the story. The label captures none of it. Food 2. Artificial sweeteners, aspartame. In July 2023, the World Health Organization's International Agency for Research on Cancer classified aspartame as possibly carcinogenic to humans, Group 2B. The same classification applies to aloe vera extract and pickled vegetables, which is frequently cited to minimize the finding. What that framing omits is that Group 2B does not mean barely worth mentioning. It means the evidence is limited but present. The specific concern with aspartame in liver health centers on studies showing aspartame metabolites, particularly methanol, which is converted to formaldehyde in the body, create oxidative stress in liver cells at chronic exposure levels. The FDA maintains that aspartame is safe at current intake levels. The WHO's cancer research body now disagrees. Those two agencies reviewed different evidence and reached different conclusions. You are still buying diet soda with a label that says nothing about either of those conversations. Food 1. Spinach and leafy greens, high oxalate chronic accumulation. This is the one most people won't see coming. Spinach is excellent nutritional advice for most people. This is not in dispute. What is in dispute, or rather what is underreported, is what chronic high-volume spinach consumption does to a specific population that is larger than most people assume. Spinach is one of the highest oxalate foods in existence. Oxalates bind to calcium in the digestive tract and can form calcium oxalate crystals. In the kidneys, those crystals are the mechanism behind kidney stones, the most common type, accounting for roughly 80% of all kidney stone cases. Roughly 1 in 11 Americans will develop a kidney stone. For those with a prior kidney stone, recurrence risk is high, and dietary oxalate is a primary modifiable factor. But this is not just about stones. Research published in nephrology journals has documented a condition called oxalate nephropathy, kidney damage from chronic oxalate crystal deposition in people who consume very high amounts of oxalate, including from juicing and green smoothie culture. The patients in those case reports were not drinking poison. They were following health advice. They were juicing spinach. Their kidneys were accumulating microscopic crystals over months until the damage was visible in their labs. The damage is not always reversible. Nobody told them the quantity mattered as much as the food itself. The advice said, eat more leafy greens. The advice was not wrong for most people. The advice did not name the people for whom it was wrong. That omission is the whole story of this channel in a single example. The knowledge was always there. The label never had it. Every food on this list is legal. Every one of them passed some version of regulatory review. Several of them have genuinely beneficial properties for most people at most doses. None of that changes the fact that the FDA's standard is not, this causes no harm. The standard is, this causes acceptable harm below a threshold we have chosen. Your body does not know the threshold. Your liver processes what arrives. Your kidneys filter what they can. Your gut lining absorbs what's present. The cumulative exposure from 20 years of eating from a modern grocery store is something no regulatory agency has ever fully modeled, because modeling it would require admitting how much they don't know. What you can do is know your specific foods. Know which ones carry documented risks. Know which populations are more vulnerable. Read past the front of the label. The warning was always there. It just wasn't where they put the marketing. Tell me in the comments, which one of these surprised you most? Was it one you already knew about, or one that genuinely caught you off guard? And if you have a family member with kidney disease, liver conditions, or a child under 10, I want to know which ones you're looking at differently now. Subscribe if you're not already part of this community. We go through the foods, the plants, the supplements, and the practices that the label skips over, and we do it specifically enough that you can actually act on it. What we put in our bodies is one of the very few things we still have real control over. Let's use it. I'll see you in the next one.